Yeah, and finding what works and knowing that that will change over time. Like I did like a lot of at home strength training, and then like lately that hasn't been working for me, and so I've been going to like reformer Pilates and I've loved it. So it just kind of knowing that that stuff will change over time, and like giving yourself grace to just keep after it. And with little kids it can be unpredictable, but just depending on where you are, just like you're saying, like making it the habit and trying, as many days as possible in a row to serve yourself so that you can, be there for others, kind of a thing, is really important.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pelvic Pulse podcast. I have a special guest with us, Lauren Fleming. She is the founder of Hem Supportwear, a company dedicated to empowering women through thoughtful, beautiful pelvic floor support garments and fostering meaningful conversations about pelvic health. Her journey began after being diagnosed with pelvic organ prolapse, or POP, if you're not familiar, following the birth of her first child. Frustrated with the lack of effective support options, Lauren was inspired to create solutions that truly help women feel supported and confident in their pelvic health journeys. And as a wife and mother of two young children, Lauren is passionate about advocating for women's wellness at every stage of life. You're in the right place, Lauren. This is what we're about as well.
All right.
Oh, well, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here. And I'm just so curious. Can you just let everyone know where you are, where you're from, just a little bit more of your background, and we can dive into the deeper things in a minute.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm in Central Texas, and I grew up in Central Texas. I actually grew up in a really small town. My graduating class had about, like, I don't know, just under 80 folks. So
Whoa,
yeah, really small.
that's small,
Yes, I know my husband went to like a huge high school, and he tells me what it was like, and I'm like, I don't know what I would have done. Ours
right?
was so small. But yeah, I've been in Central Texas my whole life. Went to UT Austin, and yeah, that's where I still am.
So cool. And okay, so how old are your children now?
They are almost 3 and 5. So their fun fact is that they have the same birthday.
Stop.
Um, yes. So they'll be 3 and 5 in May. And yeah, same day.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yes.
How do they, oh, I'm so curious. How do you guys celebrate that or do that? Do you guys just
Right
always
now,
have birthdays
yeah,
together?
right now, because they're so young, it actually works great, because it was funny last year because my oldest was like, "Oh, and it's your birthday, and it's your birthday, and it's your birthday," and I was like, "No, it's actually just the two of yours birthday. It's not everybody's birthday. I know this is confusing." But right now it's great because they like, they're so young. It's just fun for them to get to celebrate together, and then one isn't like left out and not really understanding like, why isn't it my birthday? So
Totally.
I'll be curious, like, at what point it switches away from that. And then I'm hopeful that, like, as they're in their 20s and stuff, it will switch back to being
Y-
great.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember, yeah, in my 20s in college, I always wanted to celebrate with someone who had the same birthday as me. We always did joint parties. It just kind of made it more
Yeah,
fun
it's
and
just fun. Yeah.
it's efficient.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. So, yes, we're looking forward to that next month.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's get into maybe your history with pelvic organ prolapse. Can you share, actually, first, if you don't mind, um, I guess your pregnancy journey with
Sure.
your first and how that was and the birth process and yeah, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like mine was a little unique in the sense that, like way before I was even pregnant, I have like a medical kind of it's like a blood injury injection phobia. And
Mm,
so like if I'm around certain medical like settings or procedures, different things like that, I will have like that vasovagal reaction and can faint, and like, different things where my body just kind of takes over. I've done a lot of work over time to try and mitigate that reaction, just because, you have to be in medical settings from time to time. But it was something that was like it caused some like anxiety for me prior to trying to become pregnant, because all I knew of pregnancy and labor and birth was those very like medical oriented options. And I just was like, how can I even like do this if I can barely be like in a hospital room without fainting, kind of a thing. So
interesting.
I actually had reached out to a doula in the community early on, just to be like, hey, this is me, this is what's going on. Can I even do this? And I was so thankful to have found her and then the person who started their doula group together, because they're so reassuring, and really just that started me on this path of being very intentional with like my pregnancy, what kind of care providers I was seeking, the paths that I was, shooting for if it all worked out. Um, and it was really good. And so I was careful about the kind of like information that I took in, because knowing like my phobia and that kind of thing, I just didn't want anything in my mind that could have potentially a negative reaction.
Hmm.
And so for my first, I had a good pregnancy overall. I worked with my healthcare provider was a birthing center. And so that was a good path for me, because it kind of took me out of that more intense medical setting that for me caused discomfort, whereas for a lot of people it provides comfort,
Right.
which is, to each their own kind of a thing. But that thankfully worked out, and I was able to stay there throughout the whole pregnancy.
Mm.
Um, I was like very I had a lot of morning sickness during my both pregnancies, like tons and tons of like nausea, throwing up. It was really, really hard. But once I kind of made it out of that first trimester and into second, the rest of it was pretty uneventful for me. It was, I felt pretty good for the most part. My first pregnancy, it was stressful at the end, because I ended up going to like just up to 42 weeks
Mm.
with her. And it was stressful because I wasn't prepared for kind of, I just thought you have them when you have them. I didn't realize that there can be like these different, that was like the one part I wasn't informed on. Cause otherwise I was really, I did a lot of homework, did all the classes, did everything, read the
Yeah.
books. But anyways, then it was stressful because I just didn't realize there was kind of going to be these like, oh, let's try this thing. Let's try this thing. And if it doesn't get going at a certain point, then you may have to transition to a hospital, which I was just like not prepared for. Thankfully, though, she like on like literally, I don't know, 12 or so hours before we were going to have to make the next set of decisions, she, like labor started and
Oh,
she was born. So
at exactly
that part was
42
good.
weeks, or did you go
Yeah,
beyond?
it was like just at it essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. She knew.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. I was like,
They're so smart. They're so smart, those babies.
I know it. And then also it was in the height of COVID as well. She was born in May
Ah,
2020. And so thankfully I did
wow.
have the birthing center as my plan. And so like my husband was able to come and my doula could come. Because I know for a lot of people at that time, that wasn't the case. But
Right.
thankfully for us that part worked out.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Okay. So then what was that laboring process like? Like, what was the birth process like?
It was it was honestly very interesting. So I did feel really prepared for pregnancy, like labor, delivery, all those things. Like I said, I did classes. I felt informed as far as like what my body would be going through and different things like that. And the interesting part was um I forget, I started like feeling like something was happening kind of like in the afternoon, but I wasn't really sure. I was like, I don't know like what's going on here. And so then I ended up kind of trying to go to sleep and things started progressing. But I never really felt like, oh, this is like active labor. And so
Mm.
we like had called my doula, and she's like, we'll call the midwife. And I called her and I was like very calm. I was able to easily talk to her. She's like, well, let's just kind of wait a little bit longer and just see like how you're feeling. And long story short is things progressed like rapidly. And we lived about, I don't know, 35 to 40 minutes from the birthing center. Um, and I finally got to the point where I was like, I think we need to be there. I don't think I should be at home anymore.
Mm.
And like, so my husband was like racing us there. And I literally think I would have probably had her in the car had it not been like, that much longer. Cause like we got there, I got into the room and she was born like minutes later. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and it was interesting because then I was talking to my doula later. She's like, I think you're probably in active labor like longer than you realize. And then you have like a fast like labor and delivery. And I was like, okay. And it was funny because when she got to the birthing center and met us there, and she's like, if you have another, you should really consider a home birth because I don't think you would make it like with the second one. Because they can be even faster sometimes or whatever, which I did end up having a home birth for my second and was much more like comfortable and confident in the process, knowing I was already where I needed to be. Because it was
Epic.
stressful. Just this like, the unknown of like, am I about to have her? Am I not?
Right.
Where am I in this process? Like, and I felt pretty calm, and like, and my midwife didn't hear kind of some of the signs that she normally listens for to then tell people that, hey, yeah, come on.
Mm.
So yeah, that was stressful for the first one for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown. You don't know
Yes.
how you go through the
Right.
process. It's your first
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Incredible. And then t tell me a little bit about the postpartum experience after the first, because I mean, you're not the first one I've had who's had a prolapse diagnosis after the first birth and then
hmm
got pregnant a second time and
hmm
just approached everything completely differently. So I'd love
Yeah.
to hear like I guess these little chunks of phases in between. Yeah, like all the
Yeah.
different parts.
Yeah, absolutely. So after my first, I had had between like my doula and a couple of other resources, they had kind of given some of that guidance of like, if you can, do the 5-5-5,
Hmm.
like with the resting in those different phases and trying to stay low key and, don't jump right back into doing things. Which was great because I was able to do that. My husband was a teacher and he was like home during COVID. And so we were there together. Um, so I took it like low key, and I also had a pelvic floor PT already lined up. Like it had like a package with her where it was like, one visit pre having your baby and a couple after.
Amen.
Um,
Awesome.
and so at first, things were feeling good. I mean, definitely, breastfeeding, and that was like really hard. That was one of those that I wasn't prepared for. I knew like generally how things worked, but then like how sore your nipples are and like, is this normal? And is this like the transitioning thing, or is this not, is she not latching right? Like that was very, very stressful of, is she getting enough, all those kinds of things on top of your sleep and all of that's completely, turned upside down and will
Hmm.
never didn't, go back to what it was before. Um, so kind of all those, fairly common things postpartum, the sleep and the feeding your baby and then getting used to your new normal. And then I forget, I want to say it was at maybe like 4 weeks postpartum, give or take a little bit. It was before my 6 week visit. That was when I first started having the prolapse symptoms. And so even though I'd had the pelvic floor PT like package and all of that, I still didn't know about prolapse and I wasn't prepared. That was one thing I really wasn't prepared for. Because I started having this feeling at the time I didn't have the words to say what it felt like. Now I know to call it like heaviness and bulging, things like that. And I could like literally see the tissue at my vaginal opening.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh my God, what is happening to me? And I distinctly remember like walking to my backyard kind of after those couple of weeks and just being like, something just doesn't feel right. Um, and then I had ended up checking in with my midwife at the 6 week appointment, and she checked me out and she's like, no, I don't think that it's really anything for you to worry about. I'm not sure that it's that, and kind of dismissed me from the prolapse perspective,
Did she
which was
check
really
you laying
disappointing.
down or?
She saw me laying down and standing up, and I actually had taken in photos to be
Mm,
like, hey, this is what it's looking like. I don't think this is right. And she was like, well, I think it's okay.
interesting.
It really was interesting because I look at it now and I'm like, how would you not say that that's, not prolapse?
Did you have a
Um,
photo of yourself before giving birth or like while pregnant?
I don't think I did. Um,
Yeah,
which is something
it's
like
not
in
common.
hindsight, I'm like, oh, that would have been interesting to pay more attention because you just don't think about it. You just go through your day to day and
Yeah,
you're just like, I don't think about these things. It's like my arm, or, if it's working, it's not really like on your mind. Whereas when it's not working, you're like, what is wrong?
totally. I hear that.
Um, yeah, so that's been a big difference. But thankfully, I had the pelvic floor PT who I saw right in parallel to that 6 week appointment. And she was like, yes, this is prolapse. And, kind of talked me down as far as, it's not as bad as Google makes it seem, kind of a thing. So, or, it doesn't have to be so bad. So that
Right.
was, kind of going through that first, early 6 weeks with my first,
Wow.
what that, you know, period of time looked like.
And okay, so what did that, yeah, she talked you down. So were you feeling all kinds of ways? Like what were you experiencing when you
Yeah,
had the diagnosis? I feel like
for
probably a
sure.
lot of women would resonate with whatever you're going to say next.
I mean, it was a very like, it was a scary time. It was because, of course, if you're looking at Google and you don't have the context of, professional that can talk with you
Hmm.
outside of Google, it's scary because some of the things that were going through my head were like, one of like, did I do something wrong? Could I have done something differently? Did I hold her in the car too long? Did I, this, and this? Did I not do enough strength training? Did I do too much? It's all of those things of just really questioning the whole process and kind of taking away all of the good things in the way it did go. So that was really hard because it was like, you couldn't have done anything differently. It's all hindsight. And so that was very challenging. And then also with me not knowing at that time what it was, what it meant, I was thinking things like, could I even have another like pregnancy and a baby again, that way, and things like that, where you're just like, what's happened to my body? You feel like it's failed you. You feel like you failed yourself in the sense of I should have done things differently. And then for one of the biggest things for me was like physically the toll that it takes because it was little things like I would try and walk like around the smallest like loop of the block, and like that heaviness and dragging sensation is so mentally and physically like distracting and uncomfortable. You're just like, is this going to be what it's like the rest of my life? It's those kinds of things. And or like, you've got a crying baby and you're trying to like, bounce them around and stuff. You're like, oh, I can't even do that. Like this feels miserable.
Hmm.
So it's stuff like that. That was really, really hard.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I'm like getting chills literally while you're sharing that experience and those inner emotions with it.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people that can resonate with that fear,
Yeah.
really. And then just,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm glad that your pelvic physical therapist really was able to bring you down a little bit in a good way and hopefully share like your personal prognosis. And it sounds like she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, what a scary time, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then what next? Like you stuck with your pelvic PT,
Hmm.
you did a few things, you're looking for support. Like what? Tell me the
Yeah.
next part of the journey because I feel
Yeah.
like what
So
sounds like is maybe the different, like a business birth happened before your second.
yes,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah, so she had recommended that I wear of course she like recommended the different strengthening exercises I could do, various things like body work, different stuff like that to
Yeah.
start on my, recovery journey. And then in parallel, she had recommended wearing external support to help mitigate my symptoms while, I was giving my body time and doing all those things. And so I did that. Like I went home, I, ordered the things that she had recommended. And when I got them in, it was interesting because what I was wearing, it provided support. Like it helped. Like I could wear it and I could walk around the block and it would take my symptoms from like a 9 to a 4 or 5 or something like that, where it wasn't so bad. It didn't go away completely, but it really helped. But what I found, especially in like that early postpartum body, was they were really uncomfortable to wear. So if they would have like thick elastic bands that would dig into my waist and like squeeze, and like my skin, body would come on the top and the bottom and like squeeze out of my leggings, or you could like see the straps in the back, or the Velcros would like stick and tear at my clothes. And so like what I was finding, especially at that time, because it was such a blindsiding and like hard experience, is it was like I was already feeling broken kind of physically, and then having that the mental toll that takes. And then I'm having to wear this thing to help me feel better that doesn't, while it mitigates symptoms, it makes me feel bad because it's just it's like I don't know, it's like when you're wearing something that just doesn't fit right or make you feel
Yeah.
like yourself. I was just like, God, this is really hard. And so I had gone back to my PT and I was like, hey, it's working, but I have, it's not great. She's like, yeah, I know. Like, she's like, they're effective, but, I'm sorry, I don't really have a lot of options of something else, for you to try, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And that was really like, once I learned more about how many people were impacted by this, and then I just like did a deep dive into what are the other options, because there's some, great companies out there, and there are options, thankfully. But for me, being like I have a curvy body, I'm on the bigger end of the size range, like it was very, very difficult to find something that was comfortable, that provided that support. And so that was just my light bulb moment of like, why isn't there something for someone like me? Like, why can't I find something that feels comfortable? And yeah, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just, every time I go to a PT visit, I would like, talk about it. And that was probably, for better or worse too, it always kind of encouraged me of like, well, you should do something about it. You should see what you can do. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, things just went from there.
Okay, tell me about the things. Like, what was next for you? Like, you're doing all this research, maybe f
Yeah,
feeling into how many women are actually affected by this.
yeah.
What, like, do you have any numbers off the top of your head? Because I feel like I actually don't have those
Yeah,
numbers
I
off.
mean, this stuff, I know there's of course, there's not great research on it. The stuff that I have kind of seen is that it's as many as 1 in 10 women postpartum. And then as you age, it can be 1 in 2 that have like a pelvic floor disorder. Maybe not all pelvic organ prolapse.
Right.
But it's really prolific how many people are um having being diagnosed with this, and then of course symptoms vary, levels vary, all those kinds of things, but it's a lot of people.
Yeah, of course. And I th feel like even then, people don't necessarily, like you said, don't have the language or they don't know what to
Right.
call it if they have it.
Yep.
So I feel like pelvic floor issues are oftentimes not diagnosed because people don't
Yes.
report them also.
Mhm.
There's
Right.
so many different factors with that, which this is part of the reason why this podcast exists, because we're trying to eliminate that stigma and
Right.
taboo. It's so funny though, because I was telling my mom that I was having you on the podcast today. Today's her birthday, actually, as we're recording.
Oh,
Hi,
cool.
mom.
Nice.
And
Happy
she was
birthday.
like, what? She's turning 65. Like, what's pelvic organ prolapse? And I was like, oh, let me tell you. And
Uh-huh.
and I was telling her there, are often times where you can get diagnosed right after giving birth, but oftentimes too, like what you're saying, there's a later diagnosis later on in life,
Right.
maybe even post-menopausal, way, way down the
Hmm.
line. So just FYI to all y'all out there, it doesn't have to happen immediately and something to definitely keep in mind. But okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about what was
Yeah.
next in terms of the production of what solution you came up with.
Yeah. So I had done a ton of research on all of the options. I'm very much like a spreadsheet and like organization kind of person. So I like
Love.
set up my spreadsheet, like, okay, I'm like, okay, who are all the companies that are in this space, or who are like complementary, or like maybe not that. So I just organize all of my thoughts that way. And I was looking at things like, do they have patents? All of these different things, just really trying to understand what was out there. And then I ordered most of them.
Hmm.
I don't think I have all of them, but I have most of them for me to test them myself. One, just trying to find something better, but then two, for really from that like R&D perspective of being like, okay, how is this put together? And then I had my like I tried each one and be like, okay, they have different levels of support. So I kind of made my like Likert scale of that, how did I stack them up against each other? And then what were the things that I liked about them and what were the drawbacks for me? And so once I had all of that together, I started to do some research on like, okay, who could help me like make this? Because I have zero, I mean, I can use a sewing machine and do a basic stitch, but I have no experience as far as making a garment, especially not a technical one.
Sure.
So I reached out to a local design and development firm. And then so I worked with them for a little bit. And then I worked with an individual who was kind of connected to different spaces. But yeah, in that fall of 2020 was when I made my first call to that local company and just was like, hey, this is an idea. Do you think we could work on it, kind of a thing? And they said, yeah. And so it was still, pandemic then. So we did it all virtually. And I still have like my packets that's like so thick of like all the information I sent over of like, here's the research, and I like sent samples of different garments, and yeah, here's what it needs to do. And it took a lot of prototypes. I think we had at least over 25, maybe almost 30. Just working through, yeah, different iterations. It took a long time. Really to get it right, because it was like one, it had, first and foremost, it had to provide the support, because that of course is the most important part. But then it had to be where people would actually want to wear it, because like with those others, it's like if you don't want to wear it, then you most likely aren't going to wear it and you're just going to suffer. Um, and so yeah, once we were able to, and the funny thing is I I feel like I had a little bit of a Spanx moment in the development of this, because we had a prototype and I was just like, it's feeling good from a comfort perspective, but I was like, it's just not providing the support.
Mm.
And so I was at my mom's house one day and I had some different prototypes, and she kind of helped me along the way, like testing different things, and was a good sounding board. And anyways, we were out there and she was like, yeah, it's not quite there. And she had some compression socks, and we ended up cutting, like in compression socks, like it's very compressive, like on the foot, and then it kind of goes up over the calf.
Yep.
So we cut the foot portion out of it and was like messing with that compressive material. And I was like, well, what if we pin it like on the inside? and to see if that doesn't do it. And so
Yeah.
that's how the support hammock was born. That's inside the
Uh,
garment. Is it was we used compression sock material, and because when we tried it on, we're like, yeah, this is it. This you have like the outer thing, and then when you lift it up, that is providing then that lift and compression, uplifting part that we really needed.
yes.
So yeah, it's kind of it's wild to think back of like how it's just gone over time because I'd get a prototype and I'd be like, we're never gonna get there. Like, how do we do this? But yeah, no, we got to where we are today, and then we are still, every time I can talk to somebody who's worn it, felt it, I'm like, please give me more feedback because I know we'll do another version. I've learned where I was then compared to where I was now as far as what I know and all those things is so different. And so the garment
Sure.
will continue to reflect that as we make more connections in the industry. If anybody's, it's like I always am like, okay, if people are like specialists in the space, like let me know because I still don't have a great I don't know who I'll work with yet for the 2.0 version. So I'm
Ooh.
excited for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like what you're saying, the more people who know about it and can try it out and give you that
Yep.
feedback, that's
Yes.
incredible. I mean, I've got
Yep.
a handful of clients I could be like, "Here, let's try this product and
Yep.
see how
Right.
you're
Yes.
doing." Oh, that's
Absolutely.
amazing. And then paired of course, like what you said with all the things that you did and okay, so then did you tell me about the experience with your second and how did that come about with emotions and any symptoms? Did anything flare up? Like, was your prolapse already healed in a way at that point? Like, were you already managing it super well once your prototype was done? Like, so many questions. I mean, it's all
Yes.
layered.
Yeah. So my prolapse had gotten a lot better by the time I was, thinking about getting pregnant with my second.
Okay.
Because like in the early days, it was probably, I would have said it was like a 9 or a 10 on symptoms. And I would say, I don't remember exactly, we'd have to look back at my PT notes. But
Yeah.
by the time I was like considering getting pregnant again, I had brought it down a lot just by, giving my body time, working through those different exercises, doing the body work, those kinds of things. It was a lot better. And then I had talked with my pelvic floor PT about like what would a second pregnancy mean? Like what do we know about prolapse and subsequent pregnancies? And um, I knew early on that I wanted multiple kids if that was in the cards for me. I have a sister and we're pretty close in age, and so I had kind of wanted that for my kids if possible. And so I had talked with her, and we talked about a lot of different things. And thankfully, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I want to try for another one. And I just kind of felt like, okay, whatever, happens will happen. Um, and my second pregnancy went well. It was comparable to my first in the sense of like similar, morning sickness, those kinds of things. Had
Hmm.
a really good, uneventful pregnancy through the end. This my second one didn't stress me out getting to the 42 days, which was good. And I did end up choosing a home birth for her, which was also really good for me because I had another, rapid labor and delivery.
Like, how rapid this
Uh,
time? Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, I think it was like 3 hours from like start to finish. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is that
very,
common in
very
your
fast.
family? Like, do the
I
women?
don't know. I don't know as much about like the birthing history of my family. So, and my sister hasn't had kids yet. So I'll be curious if hers is comparable. Yeah, both of mine were very fast.
That would be actually so fascinating. And I guess if yeah,
Hmm.
I wonder if you do know if there's any family history of prolapse or anything like that too in your family.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Hmm.
So fascinating. So your second was born in three
Yeah.
hours. Also, wait, did
Yes,
you
very
say
fast.
at 42 weeks too, or just before?
No, no, she was born on her due date actually. So she was right at 40.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
And
she did
then
not stress me out like the other one.
and then how was it
And
having, okay, go ahead.
no, 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 what were we gonna say?
I was just gonna ask how it was having the two of them early postpartum, those first 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah. I mean, once again, just being like thrust back into that newborn world and, even knowing what I knew about breastfeeding before, that was still hard again. Still
Yeah.
those same stresses of like, are they getting enough? Am I producing enough? All that kind of thing. Um, But the prolapse was a much, much better experience the second go
Mm.
around. Part of that I really attribute to just knowing what the heck was going on. Like I knew exactly what it was. I knew what was happening to my body, and I knew these are my options and like the way that I can proceed forward. It wasn't just this, out of nowhere thing hitting you. Um,
Hmm.
so that was so much better. And then like I already had my pelvic floor physical therapy. She was like ready to go. So we had that, going right away. And then I feel like thankfully I did not have like worse symptoms than I did before.
Mm.
It wasn't as bad as the first time. And I really think part of that was just the mental preparation of knowing what was happening. Um, and then, yeah, so it kind of like regressed and then over time has continued to improve. Um, and then I feel like it's been just recently, kind of in the last like 6 months, where as they've gotten like a little bit older, where I finally feel like, I don't know, there's just something, and I kind of call them that 202 because they're exactly 2 years apart, but there's
Yeah,
something about just like how all consuming it is having kids that age. And you're just like, you can find time for yourself and you can kind of do some things here and there, but it hasn't been until like the last 6 months where I've kind of felt even another layer of getting to do like the strength training consistently like I want to, or some of those things to just kind of help bring it even another layer better on like managing symptoms and that kind of thing.
totally. The two under
Yeah.
two, the three or four under, or
Yeah,
not three
all
or
of
four
those.
under. Yeah, it just,
Yes,
it is wild. I
it
can
is.
only imagine that's, I don't have any children yet, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to like wrap your mind around just how crazy it is.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's no joke.
it
Okay.
is.
Well, so then did you get to use your product?
I
The
did. Yeah, so at that time it was in the prototype. I had like the one of the final prototypes for my second, which was great because that was the other part is I was able to roll right into having that tour. So it was great from user testing perspective because I was
Yeah.
really able to like heavily wear test it for effectiveness and comfort. And then I was just glad that I had it for myself
Mm.
in that during that time postpartum.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you were wearing it pretty immediately, or did
Yes,
you?
yeah, I was. I started wearing it pretty much right away. And then over time, I would wear it less. Like, so as like in those early like weeks and months, I would wear it pretty frequently.
Mhm.
And then over time, I would wear it like more on the weekends if I was carrying the girls more and like doing that kind of thing versus if I was, just kind of working at my computer, I didn't feel like I needed it as my symptoms
Mm.
improved.
Right.
And then over time too, the other piece was that I ended up getting a pessary.
I
I
was
had
gonna ask you
tried for
about that.
that with after my first, I don't remember how far after, but the healthcare professional, it was someone different that I didn't actually see. It was whoever fit for pessaries like at this practice, and it was a really bad experience. I went in for the fitting. She like brings in the big case and opens it all up, and then kind of proceeds to lecture me as to why I shouldn't really be like getting it at that point. And I was like, okay. And so she goes, okay, do you want to proceed with the fitting? I was like, well, I'm not about to let you sit here and fit me for pessaries after you've like lectured me as why I shouldn't get this.
Why did
So
she?
it was
What did
bad.
she say? I'm
She
so
really kind of
curious.
talked about like if I was one that it was like for older people. She really did not
Hmm.
act like it was for younger folks. And then she talked about too, like if you're having other pregnancies, like you really didn't need to mess with the pessary. I don't know. It was just a very, very dismissive experience.
That sucks. I'm sorry that
Yeah,
you
it was horrible. So
had
yeah,
to
so I kind of left
experience
it.
that.
It was, and then it wasn't until I think it was then after my second when I revisited it, and I was like, I want to try this again, see what I can see what I can figure out. And I did get fitted for one, and it's been great. It's been a total game changer as far as support, and I totally love it.
Do you want to explain? I feel like actually I've never explained pessary on this podcast before. Do you want to share a
Yeah,
bit about your
a-
experience, what the fitting's like, and
absolutely.
how you use it in your
Yeah,
life?
so a
Yeah.
pessary, for those of you who don't know, it's an internal support device.
Mm.
So there's a couple of different kinds. They're made of mostly of medical grade silicone, and there's actually been some cool advances. Like I saw one recently that is supposed to be for all stages of prolapse, and you
Mm.
can manage it yourself. They've like developed this applicator. So for people with more advanced stages, it's really it's called, I think you pronounce it RIA. It's REIA. I haven't tried it, but I would like to. Anyways, so you insert it through the vaginal canal and it sits up. It depends on which one you get, but they like
Mhm.
mine like rests on the pubic bone and then kind of sits back.
Mhm.
And it just like acts as a support internally to hold those internal organs up.
Mhm.
And so mine is a ring with support. So it's like a round ring. They come in different sizes and you can just fold it like a taco, slide it up, and then it opens up. And so some of them, you manage yourself, like mine, I take it in and out. I don't wear it every day. And
Mm.
then for others, they can be managed by your healthcare professional. Then you may go in like every 3 months or something, and then they'll change it and insert it back in. Um, and yeah, there's all different kinds that work in different ways. So
Right.
um, yeah, anyways, and there's like a lot of different thoughts too, like on pessaries and definitely different stigmas around them. And the cool thing is like some research has shown that pessaries can actually improve prolapse. And so my pelvic floor
Mm.
PT actually, it was cool to see the progression of that over both of my pregnancies because during my first, pessary wasn't really like the forefront of like the recommendation. But now they actually, for the most part, kind of have like a general recommendation of like you should consider a pessary postpartum if you have prolapse, because some studies have shown it can improve the grade over time just because of it's like
Mm.
helping hold everything up while your body's recovering. So it's been cool. Like there's good stuff like really supporting the use of them and breaking down some of those stigmas and yeah,
Yeah.
trying to get them and get people that option.
Totally, totally. I think having as many options as possible to give
Yes.
people what they feel comfortable using and what
Yes.
they don't like.
Absolutely.
I mean, it also just depends on the approach, I suppose, on
Yeah.
and that person's preference and their accountability and their commitment. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
easier mentally to have something internal supporting you while you can just
Mm-hmm.
go about your day, if you've got two under two and you're just
Mm-hmm.
life is crazy. And
Yeah.
I could see that being a huge, like, literal support.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess for other people who are like, maybe you don't have children, but you're like, like, how does that even work? I would just relate it to like a menstrual disc or even like
Mm-hmm.
maneuvering, kind of the way that you
Yeah.
would insert it and where it fits is kind of the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Behind the pubic bone, like you said, and kind of like sits up by the cervix, hopefully.
Right.
Totally. But okay, that's incredible. I would say breath work also for me is like one of my huge easy go-tos, but again,
Yes.
some women are not able to take that mental break and spend time connecting to their body in that way. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where I think some of these supports could be so nice, whether that's
Yeah.
internal or external.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, having multiple options, I think is great because depending on what you're doing, internal might be better, external might be better. And I think it's just good to have multiple choices.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then tell me about the feeling of like wearing your own product. And I mean, yeah, it was a prototype, but it's also like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I made this. That's so cool. Another thing you
Yes.
made.
Right. Yeah, there you go. No, it's been really cool. I mean, it's so interesting because I feel like you get in this mindset of just kind of putting one foot after the other. So you kind of take for granted all these big, like really cool things that you do. You're just like, well, I'm doing the next thing and I'm gonna do the next thing. And but it is cool to like step back and even just like small things of like I got these like branded mailers and I'm like, how cool is that? That like I get on and I bought 1,000 of them. You're just like, oh,
No, I
I
get
felt
that.
confident in that, right? You're just like, all
Yeah.
right.
The first time I
But
got
yeah.
printed business cards, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's
Yep.
me. Like, what?
Yeah, so cool. So
Uh,
yeah, it's been very cool to see it come to life and then, to be at the phase where I am now, which is still very early in the business and yeah, just and getting feedback from folks. I mean, that for me has been the coolest part is like people who will reach out and say how big of an impact it's made for them. And I'm
mm.
like, okay, I'll keep doing it. Let's go.
Yes, no, that is seriously like feel like the biggest motivating factor is just knowing
Yes.
that what you're doing is helping one person, two, three, and then the
Yes.
numbers just add up and it's
Yeah.
so cool. And I love that. Okay. Yeah. So then where do you see it all going, I guess? Like you're saying a 2.0 version, so you're still
Hmm.
collecting maybe
Yes.
some information, but yeah, share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would love definitely a 2.0 version, just as we can continue to get more feedback. And then, like I said, us internally mature the design and development of who we're working with and things like that.
Mm.
So I see that in the future. I've also, especially now that I've been using pessaries, like I'm interested in supporting people who use those. So not necessarily making a pessary, but like how do you manage the pessary and things that go along with that? Because what I found is there's really nothing out there
You mean in terms of
that to manage that.
education, or what do you
No,
mean?
like what do I do with my pessary when I'm not wearing it? Like, and I'm sitting it on the
Ah,
counter and things like I was on a forum and I had posted this question of like, how do you store your pessary? And people were like, Ziploc baggies, margarine containers, Tupperware, and I'm like,
wait,
this is ridiculous.
what?
Yeah, there's nothing there. Well, that's not true. There are two cases. So I scratch that. There's two cases, but depending on your type of pessary, it may not fit. Like mine didn't fit in the case. Um,
Oh,
and things like
interesting.
that. So it's just stuff like that where I'm like, why? To me, again, it's just this like under talked about, researched, invested in space.
Yeah.
And it's I've kind of had this another lived experience of like, okay, I have this pessary, I take it in and out, like what soap am I washing it with? Just kind of different things like that as far as I don't feel supported as a pessary user with the products that are out there.
Right,
Things
right.
like that. So my kind of vision for the company would be to really just be this like go-to brand for folks who are navigating different pelvic floor challenges and meeting them where they are over time. And whether it's external support, things to help you with things, managing internal support or kind of other things that can just be in this holistic pelvic health space. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to be one of the go-to brands for women as they navigate those different life stages.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm thinking right now about just like my menstrual cup. If I use
Mm-hmm.
that, if I'm like out in the world,
Yeah.
I do a bunch of different menstrual care products, but yeah, all of them because I have I think like three different menstrual cups, all
Mm-hmm.
different kinds because my body might, not feel
Yeah.
comfortable with the
Yep.
certain type that I have that day. So I've got all these different bags for them,
Mm-hmm.
but they're like, it comes with the product. But yeah,
Yep.
just
Right.
because every pessary is different and unique literally to the
Yeah.
user, it's
Right.
it's hard to match that with an appropriate case or
Mm-hmm.
cover or
Yeah.
also something that just like makes you feel good about using it,
Yes.
you
That's like
know?
one of the biggest things about the whole, like, because when I got my ring with support, it comes in this like hermetically sealed, plastic bag, which is good. You want it to be like sanitized and everything.
Yeah.
But literally, like you cut it open and then that's like all you have. So it doesn't come with like the cute bag to put it in and then the menstrual cup wash and those kinds of things. It's just like,
Right.
well, here it is. Go manage it kind of
It's
a
like
thing.
giving a retainer without like
Yeah,
giving the
right.
retainer
Exactly. Yeah,
case.
like we get eyeglasses with a case, we get a retainer with a case, we get all these things. Why doesn't my pessary come with anything to put it in?
Well, what the heck?
So,
It's like
yeah.
inside jewelry. We need jewelry cases.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm just like, come on. But yeah, stuff like that where I just kind of, and for me, it's like I'm living them. Then that's why I'm also too telling people like, if you're experiencing something that you feel like is not being served well, I'd love to hear about it because I know there's other things in this space that I'm not living personally, and so they're not on my radar.
Mm.
So yeah, it's just interesting to talk with folks and kind of hear about, what they're experiencing and where they feel like their needs aren't fully being met.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyone listening to this and you are just thinking about maybe your own pelvic discomfort, your challenges, anything where maybe the products you're using are coming up short, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, even like what you're saying with like the washes or soaps, like what are you using? I mean, ideally you are using some kind of soap that sanitizes, but also
Yeah,
isn't, fragranced or isn't going to irritate
right.
your skin
Right.
and your vulva, your
Yeah.
vagina.
Right.
It's,
It's like you need to be careful with what you don't want to use just anything. And another thing that's been interesting is like just when you're like traveling or different things like that, like,
yeah.
you don't have your big thing of soap and you're trying to take it with you. It's just it's interesting. And another interesting thing too, I don't necessarily have a product idea for this, but is how different managing my period has been since having prolapse.
Ooh, tell me more. And then,
So
I don't know,
yeah, so
exercise, sex, anything like that. I'm down to
yeah,
talk
I
about.
was a tampon wearer before,
Okay.
and that was just my go-to. And it was also before there was all of this stuff about like what's in all of the tampons. So
Mm,
pre that. Anyways, since prolapse, I cannot wear a tampon anymore because the tissue, it just pushes it out. And it's been so frustrating and really hard because right now I'm just having to manage my period with external products, which I still don't like. But I've figured out a routine with like trying different things that has worked for me. And I tried menstrual cups, but that didn't work. I do want to try a disc because I've heard it, it's kind of like you were saying, similar size and placement to a pessary, so that might work. So I have that on my list to try. I just keep getting like I have a period and then I turn around and I seem to have the next. I'm like, I didn't order the disc. I need to do this.
I'm the same. I
What's
still haven't
happening?
tried a disc.
It's crazy. I'm just like the time just flies. I'll be in the midst of like having my period. I'm like, order the disc, and then I don't, and then I'm like, oh crap, it's the next month, and I didn't order the darn thing.
Yeah.
So need to do that. But yeah, right now I manage it with a combination of I kind of use my pessary as like a interim disc, which it kind of helps just keep everything situated. But I'll wear like period underwear. Sometimes I'll pair that with like a pad during the day. And then at night, I actually will use like a sea sponge. They're not
Mm,
technically marketed for menstruation because they legally can't,
mm,
but I think they call them for like personal use. And I've talked with other people who had pelvic organ prolapse and they had a lot of luck with those. And so I use that at night. And it's because it doesn't feel as comfortable for me when I'm upright, but if I'm laying down, it doesn't bother me at all.
yeah.
But yeah, anyways, it's been crazy, like having to just completely figure all of that out again. And it's stressful because it's like I was just never a pad wearer before, and like figuring that out is hard. And then pairing that with period underwear, and they're not all great. Like, I don't know, it's hard to find the right thing.
Yeah, I've had to switch between a few different things because also you never know what's in those materials as well.
Yep.
I've messed with Thinks before, and
Mhm.
honestly, their cut is not as comfortable to me. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
not.
don't love the cut.
Mhm.
The Period Company has I love their cuts. Like,
Oh,
it
cool.
feels like I'm wearing a like swim bottoms, but
Hmm.
like high waisted and just
Hmm.
like no real elastic band. It just feels like a stretchy
Cool. I'll have to
material
check them out.
throughout. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I love wearing those to bed or just honestly free bleeding these days.
Hmm.
I'm not bleeding right now, but I've got my free bleed blanket around me because it's also just cozy and warm. But
Uh-huh.
that's
Nice.
a waterproof lined blanket that's
Yep.
washable. And yeah, that could be another option too. If you didn't want anything in your body while you were laying
Hmm.
horizontal, anyways,
Yeah,
you
true.
don't have that gravity pressure pushing down on you and your pelvic floor
Yep.
and the organs. So, yeah, that is fascinating, actually. I haven't really thought
Yeah.
about like the period management and just respecting the body. I mean, obviously your uterus is a little bit heavier during that time and um just a teensy bit heavier, but it makes an impact on
Hmm.
these tissues that might
Yeah.
feel overworked already.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. What else would you have to share about that? Any other words of wisdom for anyone else living with a prolapse or currently going through their healing process? Or maybe they're just like, do I have this right now? Do I need to
Yeah.
go get checked out?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely if you aren't sure if you have it or if you think you do, I would highly encourage you to see somebody, preferably like a pelvic health physio or pelvic floor physical therapist, because that's their specialty. So compared to like your OBGYN who's checking on kind of different things,
Mhm.
it may have like dismissed like what you're saying or just very cursorily checked for things. Getting connected with the specialist is going to be your best bet for understanding what's going on with your body. And then I talk a lot too about how even if you don't have something going on, I think it's really important. I like to take kind of like the annual check-in visit approach because
Mm,
you never know when something will go wrong, and you might have like kind of minor things like your pelvic floor may be tense and you may not know it, and that could lead to things later.
mhm,
But just like with the other things that you check in on a regular basis, if you can, I would encourage including that, because then you have the relationship with somebody so that if and when something does go wrong, you already have that. Or, like I said, you can be more proactive with that because as your body changes, all of those things change, and it can be really helpful. And then also that there are a lot of good resources. I'd say be careful like what you look into. Some forums can be pretty scary
mm,
because you have to know that like all of those people or a lot of people who are in them are experiencing like they might be like where I was at that first time postpartum. So stuff can feel like heavy and scary. But it's not all like that. So just be careful with what kind of information you're consuming because that can be hard. But yeah, just try and find people who can talk with you about it, and then support you and know that there's like a lot of options to help manage and mitigate over time, and then that it will also roller coaster. I mean, I'll have times, I'll have a day and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. I haven't thought about my prolapse in a long time. And then a week later, I'll be like, oh crap, why did I say that? Now it's like bothering me again. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. But yeah, I have a lot of days now where I don't even think about it, don't feel it. And I mean, that's been a long journey, I have a lot of days where I'm like, am I always going to be dealing with this? So, and that's still now.
Totally, totally. I feel like from and like what you were saying with consuming certain information and who you spend time with and who you're talking to about it, it sounds like you're just trying to be very, very discerning, which to me, from an energetic perspective, when it comes to things like leaking or prolapse specifically, not even depending on like where that prolapse is coming from, front, back,
Right.
or above, it it is like a sensation of overwhelm. It's a
Mhm.
sensation of too much on your plate. You're taking too much in. What can we remove? What can we let go of? What can we give to someone else to hold for us? And then we can focus on holding ourselves.
Yeah,
So I love that.
absolutely.
I love that you shared that. And yeah, I feel like the more days, obviously, that you have where there's a big stretch of no symptoms, I feel like that's just going to
Yeah.
get better and better and
Yes.
better the more you
Yeah.
focus on like living your life and keeping your things up that you know are helping you. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because at least to me too, pelvic floor exercises or just like general exercises and movement, stretching, breath work, all the things, it's like brushing and flossing your teeth. Like you don't
Mm.
just depend on your dentist to do that one cleaning, that one
Right.
annual
Yeah.
checkup, but you are doing
Absolutely.
the work and you're diligent and
Yeah.
you can do it. Lauren
Yes.
is
Yeah. And then
proof.
finding what works and knowing that that will change over time. Like I did like a lot of at home strength training, and then like lately that hasn't been working for me. And so I've been going to like reformer Pilates and I've loved it. So it just kind of knowing that that stuff will change over time, and like giving yourself grace to just keep after it. And with little kids, it can be unpredictable, but just depending on where you are, just like you're saying, like making it the habit and trying, as many days as possible in a row to serve yourself so that you can, be there for others kind of a thing is really important.
I love that. Thank you for that reminder, Lauren. And thank you for being here and sharing
Yeah.
your story so openly and removing that stigma. That's part of the process with this. So that is
Yes.
really rad. Do you want to shout out the website and where people can find you and purchase their own
Yeah,
garment? And
absolutely.
yes,
Yeah, great. So you can find us. Our website is hemsupportwear.com. It's HEM. That's the initials actually of my girls and our first dog. Um,
aw,
yes. So hemsupportwear.com. And that's also our like Instagram and Facebook handles, and for YouTube, all the socials.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thanks everyone for listening. Go check them out, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.